Issue 34. We start out with a fake out where it looks like Uncle Chuck and the robot dog are being electrocuted in front of Sonic, but because it's the first panel of the comic, obviously nothing important like that's gonna happen. So instead, it's immediately revealed that they are just being submitted to a failed attempt at a deroboticization process by Rotor. Uncle Chuck tries to look on the bright side by saying that because they're robots, they don't get tired anymore, even though it doesn't make too much sense since even electronics needs to be recharged and rests after a while of use. Like, even with computers, if you leave them on for too long, bad stuff starts to happen, and they don't even need to be recharged. After Rotor asks to run another test on them, we cut to Robotnik being the leader of a huge fighting force of robots that look like regular soldiers, wearing a military jacket that looks infinitely better than his regular clothing, which I've already forgotten what it looks like. Why is Snively so surprised and startled by this? Shouldn't he be used to Eggman leading armies by now? The problem for the Freedom Fighters is that according to Eggman, these particular robots are invincible. So how are they going to save the day from a surprise attack of invincible super soldiers? Oh great, Dulcie the Dragon, that's how. I thought she wouldn't return for a really long time, and yet here she comes, overhearing the conversation conveniently and dropping in out of complete nowhere. It makes sense that she'd be able to do this, since she can fly, but she shows up so rarely that every time she does show up, it feels like a Deus Ex Machina. I guess the writers couldn't think of any less cheap solution. But for some reason she forgets the invincible part, the vital part that is necessary for the Freedom Fighters. Is this supposed to be funny? She wasn't this incompetent earlier. I guess they realized they didn't give her any flaws or any personality beforehand and are overcompensating by making her a total dolt. You'd think invincible soldiers would be easy to remember, but no. She remembers them as invisible instead. Although that's not really too bad. At least she got to warn them about the army part. That's the important thing, I guess. Uncle Chuck volunteers to go on the mission to destroy the army because he knows his way around Robotnik's headquarters, and Sonic thankfully decides to go with him as a super speedy bodyguard. I like how when putting in Robotnik's access code, Uncle Chuck comments that it's odd that he hasn't changed his code since he had escaped. And nothing ever comes of this in this particular issue. It's not like he puts in codes and they turn out to be the wrong ones or lead to a trap. So it's good that they lampshade this, I guess, but nothing really comes of it. Sonic goes to run, and after Chuck reminds him that he's carrying explosives, which he never gets to use, we see Snively and Eggman have very conveniently managed to be at the head of a security monitor, showing footage of Chuck at exactly the right time for them to spot them there. What if they were going out for lunch or something? This is a problem with villains having plot convenience monitors. I can easily buy that they put security cameras everywhere, but it's still up to luck whether the villains are actually going to be there to watch the footage at exactly the right time, which they always are, somehow. Well, I guess all the times when they aren't there aren't interesting enough scenarios to have a story written around them. But still, somehow, Eggman regains control of Uncle Chuck just by shooting him with an energy. Oh, and Mutzy too. I really like Sonic's line here, that's worth a chuckle. But here's the biggest plot hole of this whole story. Why did Robotnik not roboticize Sonic? He had him. That was a perfect chance. Fortunately, Bunny, Antoine, and Tails make themselves useful by warning Sally that they had waited outside Robotropolis for hours and there was no sign of Sonic and Chuck. Why are they all dressed like that? And what's the point of sending all three of them? Why not just send one? Well, I guess there's gotta be someone to warn the others if one of them gets captured while waiting, so at least two would make sense, but why all three of them? Sally then looks through binoculars and sees Robotnik's army showing up, with Sonic tied to the front of Eggman's tank, I guess as a hostage to make them hold back against fighting the tank. Why would Antoine say he wouldn't dare destroy the forest? That was stupid, of course he would. And again, this raises the question of why he hasn't destroyed the entire forest a long time ago. However, the day is saved when for some reason the army marches themselves off a cliff, and Sonic somehow got himself free from clearly being tied to the tank by all four limbs and got himself into the tank. This better have a good explanation because this really feels like a Deus Ex Machina. Chuck flies up to Eggman with a plane and brings him and Snively away from Sonic, and Sonic reveals that Chuck's plan worked like a charm. I'd like to point out that At this point, when I was reading the comic, before Sonic said this, I started to suspect that maybe Uncle Chuck had been immune to the energy Eggman supposedly enslaved him with, and was faking being under his control, allowing him to reprogram the army and free Sonic while Eggman's back was turned. And it turns out I was correct. And they actually gave an explanation, too, which I was impressed by. Rotor had inserted a neuro overrider into the brains of Uncle Chuck and Mutsky the last time he tested them, and the text at the bottom of the panel says it was the same one that he tried to use on Sally to keep her free will during her plan to turn into a robot and sabotage Eggman. So we have a double whammy when it comes to Chekhov's guns. We have Rotor reusing a device from an earlier story instead of throwing it away, which makes perfect sense, and we have that test Rotor mentioned at the start of the story being helpful. It's smart of Rotor to have done this instead of assuming he could send Uncle Chuck to Eggman's base with no negative repercussions from tempting fate. This is much better of a plot resolution than Dulcie coming in and saving the day out of nowhere. Although I can't help but wonder, if the super soldiers were really invincible, why were they destroyed from falling off a cliff instead of just continuing to work? Maybe Eggman overestimated their well-madeness, but he made them, didn't he? Wouldn't he know? Tails saying Uncle Chuck and Muskie were only pretending to be robots was stupid though, since they were robots before. I guess he only defines robot as someone working for Eggman who's made of metal. And how the hell did Muskie know to pretend to be against Sonic? He's just a dog. You can't train a dog to do that so easily, can you? It's not like it can speak English and understand the command to do that. And it's not like he can bribe him with treats because a dog can't eat a treat when it's a robot dog. If they don't need to sleep anymore, then they wouldn't need to eat either. Why isn't the robot dog miserable from not being allowed to eat anymore, not understanding why? Did Uncle Chuck reprogram him too, to make him willing to go along with the plan? Or maybe I'm just underestimating how well you can train a dog. Also, Rotor looks like a cute and adorable plushie something in this panel, so I'm not sure why. He looks like he's been changed into a much younger kid. It's also explained that Uncle Chuck had loosened Sonic's shackles enough that it only looked like he was captured and held to the tank, explaining how he was able to get free. Oh, I love this. Not so fun having your friends make secret plans behind your back now, is it, Sally? How does that feel? You know, like when you made the plan about turning yourself into a robot to get Eggman's technology and use it against him? Wasn't so fun for your friends, not knowing that you were doing that, huh? I just love this, really. You know, usually when I call her a self-righteous hypocrite, I don't really mean the hypocrite part, it's just for emphasis. But here, oh yeah, she's definitely a hypocrite. She doesn't even acknowledge that, you know, this is how I make other people feel when I make them worry about my secret plans. So it just kind of, well, at least it shows that she's a flawed character, you know. That she doesn't realize this, that she isn't entirely self-aware. And I really like how it's revealed that Eggman still thinks Chuck and Muskie are on his side, allowing the two of them to be useful to the Freedom Fighters by working as spies. Now for the Knuckles story, and they actually pointed out that Archimedes is basically playing hide-and-seek. I didn't expect that to be lampshaded. Still, the first few panels of the story are complete filler, just consisting of Knuckles monologuing to himself about stuff he already said and we already know. Why is he even saying this? He finally reaches the mountain and explains to the audience that his father had told him about that peak being magically created and the way things used to be before Great Betrayal. We get a flashback to old advanced echidnas, and just like I said, of course they actually did spot the comet because they have astronomers that monitor the skies for that. So I have to ask, why the hell did Athari say that they were too busy to notice that comet until it was too late? They clearly did notice it in time. It's the end of the world. No, it's the end of your society. Do they really only view their society as part of the world? I don't understand why people with such advanced technology wouldn't have been able to just destroy the comet with a laser, or like blast it away, or change its orbit, instead of having to move their entire society up into the sky. Also, this whole story is feeling like filler right now, because I'm just getting reiterated to me what Theory already told Tails about. The only new thing I learned about was that mountain being magically created, somehow by the island rising up, and a great betrayal happening. And it is nice to see this backstory from the perspectives of the actual ancient civilians, though. I like that at least. Also, there isn't a third story after this one. I checked. So for once, I got the entire issue in one downloaded video. Yay! Freaking finally. The first story was written by Angelo, and because of the copious use of Chekhov's gun, I liked it. The whole use of taking advantage of elements introduced earlier on as a much more logical tools for the characters to save the day. It's always an example of brilliant writing compared to just having a Deus Ex Machina come out of nowhere. And it really made Chuck feel like a true genius by having to think of a plan like this, as well as relatively smart forward-thinking to give him protection from being put under Eggman's control again. Only problems I have are nitpicks. Why are Bunny and Twan Tails dressed in black just because they went to Robotropolis when then being Mobians alone would make them stand out? How was Mutsuki, a dumb animal, able to be trained to pretend to hate Sonic? And most importantly, how the hell was Eggman expecting to return robots under his control just by blasting electricity at them? It looks like it covered their entire bodies, which would damage them, rather than just shooting it into their heads. It's magic, I guess. It's a magic beam. This was a great story. I was even able to forgive Dulcie being in the story, even if she was very convenient to have actually been there for once at that exact time. At least they gave her an actual character this time around, being forgetful, but still able to fly and whatnot, so she's still useful. And the second story was of course by Mike Kantovic and Ken Penders, but aside from giving us the echidna's perspective on the floating island's origin, it feels like filler because it just reiterates what we already know. All it really did was have Knuckles reach the mountain, which could have happened off screen just fine, so again, the story could have been skipped, and explain that the mountain was created by the island floating upwards in the first place. Somehow. And even then we aren't told how a mountain would be created that way. It was pointless. And because it was long enough to be an actual story this time, it just ate up space in the comic that could have been dedicated to a story that didn't entirely consist of repeating exposition. I'm fine with exposition, as long as it's at least new information. But all in all, I really liked this issue.